The air in this room is heavy, not in a sad way, but in a literal, physical way. It's thick with the scent of beeswax polish, old paper from the books lining the walls, and the faint, sweet perfume of the woman sitting across from you, your aunt, who is currently pretending to read a very serious-looking novel but is, in fact, watching you with the focus of a hawk. You are in a Victorian parlor, and it is the quietest, most loudly silent place on earth. You can feel the whalebone corset digging into your ribs. It's a constant, unyielding pressure, a physical reminder of the unyielding social pressures that dictate your every move. It forces you to sit unnaturally straight on a sofa that, despite its plush velvet appearance, feels like it was designed by someone who fundamentally misunderstood the human spine. You shift just a fraction of an inch, and the rustle of your starched petticoats sounds like a landslide in the stillness. Your aunt's eyes flick up from her book for a single, critical second before returning to the page. Message received. You remain still. This is the world you inhabit. A world of unspoken rules, of things left unsaid because saying them would be improper. Impropriety is the great Victorian monster, a shadowy beast that lurks behind every conversation, ready to pounce on a misplaced word or an overly familiar smile. You cannot simply speak your mind. You can't tell the young man you met last week that you found his conversation about modern irrigation techniques surprisingly charming. You can't tell your friend that you are feeling a bit lost and melancholic today. These thoughts, these simple human emotions, are trapped inside you, pacing back and forth like caged animals. The sheer exhaustion of it all is a quiet ache behind your eyes. The rules are endless. A gentleman may not speak to you unless he has been formally introduced. You may not look a gentleman directly in the eye for more than a fleeting moment. A conversation must remain on approved, neutral topics. The weather, a sermon, perhaps the health of a distant royal. It's like trying to communicate through 3 feet of water. You see the shapes of meaning, the gestures of genuine feeling, but everything is distorted and muffled. This is a widely known and accepted fact of the era. The etiquette books of the day were bestsellers, each one a manual for how to successfully navigate this social minefield without spontaneously combusting from sheer frustration. What's less talked about is the sheer, mind-numbing boredom of it all. The endless afternoons spent indoors, the carefully choreographed walks in the park, the stiff and silent dinners. It's a life painted in shades of beige and brown, punctuated by the ticking of the grand, imposing clock on the mantelpiece. Tick, tock. Each sound measures out another second of polite, suffocating silence. You find yourself wondering if the furniture has more freedom than you do. At least the armchair gets to face the window all day. And so, a quiet rebellion begins to brew. Not a rebellion of protests and picket signs, but one of whispers and secrets. It's a rebellion born of necessity. When direct language fails, you find another way. You learn to speak with the flick of a fan, the precise angle of a parasol, or the strategic dropping of a handkerchief. These are small gestures, tiny sparks in the gloom, but they aren't enough. They can convey a flirtatious invitation or a stern dismissal, but they can't convey poetry. They can't say, "I think of you when I am alone," or "I am sorry for our disagreement." For that, you need a language with a larger vocabulary. One that is beautiful, subtle, and, most importantly, innocent. Historians still wonder just how deep this silent communication truly ran. Was the language of flowers a genuine, widely understood code used by thousands of ordinary people to navigate these tricky social waters? Or was it more of a charming, romanticized fad, something largely confined to the upper classes and aspiring poets who had too much time on their hands? The truth, as it often is, probably lies somewhere in the middle. For some, it may have been a parlor game. But for you, sitting here in this stuffy, airless room, the idea of it feels less like a game and more like a lifeline. The thought that you could say everything you're feeling, every complicated, messy, wonderful thought, by simply choosing the right combination of petals and leaves feels like a miracle. A beautiful, fragrant, secret weapon against the tyranny of the unspoken. The clock continues its relentless ticking. The light outside is beginning to fade, casting long, soft shadows across the room. Your aunt finally closes her book with a soft thud. The afternoon is almost over. But for you, an idea is just beginning to blossom. An idea that smells of roses and lavender, of fresh soil and quiet rebellion. You just need the key, the dictionary, a way to learn the words. Your journey into the silent language is about to begin. The decision has settled in your mind, not with a crash, but like a soft fall of snow. It feels both thrilling and perfectly logical. Of course, flowers is the only way. You need this language because the one you're allowed to use is broken. It's a tool designed for building walls, not bridges. Think about your world, this carefully constructed reality. It is a world governed by the all-seeing eye of the chaperone. Your aunt, currently lost in her own thoughts by the window, is a professional chaperone. Her role in life is to be a human buffer, a walking, talking embodiment of propriety, ensuring that no unscripted moments ever occur between you and a potential suitor. A gentleman cannot simply visit you. The process is a masterpiece of social bureaucracy. First, he must be formally introduced by a mutual acquaintance. Then, he may leave his calling card at your home. This is a lesser-known but crucial piece of the puzzle. Your hallway has a small, ornate silver tray just for this purpose, and it's a battlefield of social maneuvering. The cards pile up, each a crisp white rectangle bearing a name. A card with a folded corner means the visitor came in person. If he leaves his card and you wish to see him, your father or brother might leave a card at his residence in return. It's a social spreadsheet managed with tiny pieces of cardboard. Only then, after this bizarre paper-based courtship, might he be invited for tea under the watchful gaze of at least one, and preferably two, elder female relatives. During this visit, you will not be alone. Not for a second. The idea of two unmarried, unrelated people of the opposite sex being in a room together without supervision was considered so scandalous it was almost unthinkable. This is a well-documented historical fact. The chaperone was an absolute necessity for any respectable young woman. You and he will sit several feet apart and discuss the weather. You will talk about a recent public lecture on the moral character of mosses. You will inquire after the health of his distant cousins. It is a conversation designed to reveal nothing, a performance of politeness. And all the while you're trying to figure out, is this person kind? Do they have a sense of humor? Do their eyes light up when they talk about something they truly love? These are the questions you're desperate to answer, but the system is designed to prevent you from ever asking. It's exhausting. It's like trying to get to know someone through a series of formal job interviews, where the only job is marriage and the only qualification is not causing a scene. The language of flowers, then, isn't just a romantic whim. It's a hack. It's a brilliant, beautiful loophole in a system full of rigid clauses. It allows you to slip a message past the guards, to whisper directly into someone's mind without ever moving your lips. A red rose tucked into a bouquet doesn't break any rules. It's just a flower. But if the recipient knows the code, that red rose shouts, "I love you," louder than any public declaration. Historians can document these rules of etiquette, but they can only speculate on the quiet, pervasive anxiety it must have produced. Did the structure make people feel safe, their paths clearly laid out? Or did it create a constant, low-level hum of panic, a fear of misstepping and bringing shame upon one's entire family? For you, it's a bit of both. There is a certain comfort in knowing the rules, but there is a deep, abiding frustration in being unable to bend them, even a little. The system prizes conformity above all else, and your own thoughts, your own unique feelings, feel like contraband. This is why the petals became necessary. They are a silent protest. They are your way of saying, I am more than the rules I follow. A bouquet can be a poem, a confession, a joke, an insult, a question. It can say, I saw you at the concert last night, and your presence made it all the more beautiful. It can ask, are your intentions sincere? It can even warn, be careful, my aunt suspects something. All of this can be communicated in a handful of stems and leaves, handed over in plain sight with a polite smile, a perfect, legal little parcel of rebellion. As the last of the daylight bleeds from the sky, a gas lamp is lit by a servant down the street, its soft, yellow glow pushing back against the encroaching twilight. The room you're in grows darker, the familiar shapes of the furniture softening into shadows. The heavy silence is no longer oppressive. Feels different now. Feels like an opportunity. The quiet is the canvas, and you are about to learn how to paint on it. You imagine a world where you can speak a language that your aunt, for all her watchfulness, cannot understand. A language that belongs only to you and to those you choose to share it with. The thought sends a small, hopeful warmth spreading through your chest, a welcome counterpoint to the rigid press of your corset. The next step is clear. You can't just study the theory. You need a text to decipher. Your education must begin with a message meant just for you. The next morning, the air feels different. It's still cool, carrying the damp, earthy scent of a London that hasn't yet been choked by the day's coal smoke. You wake with a sense of purpose that feels new and exciting. The suffocating weight of yesterday's parlor has lifted, replaced by a quiet, humming anticipation. You go through the motions of your morning routine, the complicated dance of dressing, the formal family breakfast where your father disappears behind a newspaper. But your mind is elsewhere. You are waiting. You're not entirely sure what for, but you feel it in your bones. Something is about to happen. And then it does. There's a sharp rap at the front door. Not the confident knock of a family friend or the heavy thud of a deliverman, but something lighter, more discreet. A few moments later, the parlor maid, a young woman named Clara with perpetually curious eyes, enters the room. She's holding a small, tightly arranged bouquet. It's not a grand, ostentatious display. It's modest, almost pocket-sized, and wrapped in a delicate lace doily, held together with a simple white ribbon. It's a tussy-mussy. For you, miss, Clara says, her expression carefully neutral, but you can see the flicker of a question in her gaze. She places it on the small table beside you and retreats, leaving you alone with the fragrant little mystery. This is it, your primer, your first lesson. You lean closer, your heart giving a little thump against your ribs. The scent is heavenly. It's a mix of sweet and spicy, green and floral. You pick it up. It's surprisingly heavy for its size, dense with meaning. This small, handheld bouquet is a classic of the era, a widely accepted form for sending a personal, significant message. Larger bouquets were for decoration. A tussy-mussy was for conversation. Your eyes trace the arrangement, trying to make sense of the composition. At its very center is a single, perfect red rose, its petals just beginning to unfurl. This one you think you know. It's the most famous symbol of all, the one that has trickled down even into your modern consciousness. Love. But it feels too simple, too direct. Around the rose, like courtiers attending their queen, are several smaller, more unusual flowers. There's a spray of delicate, pale purple flowers you recognize as lavender. Its clean, calming scent rises to meet you. Tucked beside it are a few sprigs of what looks like ivy, its deep green leaves glossy and perfect. Then you spot something you don't recognize at all. A cluster of small, star-shaped blue flowers. They are a startling, vivid blue, almost electric. Finally, almost hidden beneath the larger blooms, is a sprig of feathery, green fern. You turn the little bouquet over in your hands. There's no card, no name, no clue as to who sent it. This is another part of the game. The sender is anonymous, confident that you will either understand the message or be intrigued enough to find out how. It's a clever move, a challenge disguised as a gift. Who could it be? The young man who talked of irrigation? Unlikely. He seemed far too practical for such romantic gestures. Perhaps the quiet, scholarly gentleman you were introduced to at church last Sunday. The one with the kind eyes? Or maybe it wasn't a suitor at all. This is a lesser-known detail about floriography. While its most famous use was for romance, it was a language for all occasions. A tussy-mussy could be sent from a friend as a get-well-soon message, or from a relative as a note of congratulations. The anonymity makes it all the more puzzling. The bouquet sits in your hand, a fragrant little bundle of questions. You bring it to your nose again, inhaling deeply. The scent of the lavender is soothing, but the mystery of the other flowers makes your mind race. It's a puzzle box, and the key is knowledge. You feel a surge of determination. You will not let this challenge go unanswered. You will decipher this message piece by piece. Historians still debate the true prevalence of these floral dictionaries. Were they common household items, sitting on the parlor table next to the family Bible? Or were they more niche, a treasure sought out by those truly dedicated to the craft? For many young women, owning one was a quiet act of rebellion in itself, a personal key to a secret world. It wasn't just a book. It was an essential tool for navigating the complexities of their social lives. And you know with absolute certainty that you must get your hands on one. The bouquet on your table is a question, and somewhere out in the bustling, noisy streets of London, a book holds the answer. Your quiet parlor, once a prison, now feels like a study. The investigation has begun. You place the tussy-mussy in a small vase of water, a promise to keep its message alive until you can finally read it. The quest for a floral dictionary feels like a spy mission. You can't simply announce at the breakfast table, "Father, I require a book that will teach me to conduct clandestine conversations using foliage." That would go over about as well as suggesting the family invest in a hot air balloon. So you must be clever. You concoct a believable errand, a sudden and desperate need for new embroidery silks, a task so stereotypically feminine that it raises no suspicion. Your aunt, satisfied with your domestic ambitions, agrees, sending you off in the carriage with Clara as your mandatory chaperone and accomplice. The embroidery shop is stuffy and smells of wool, but you perform your role with admirable dedication, choosing a few skeins of silk with convincing enthusiasm. Then, with your alibi secured, you suggest a quick detour. "Clara," you say, your voice casual, "I've heard of a charming little bookshop just around the corner. Shall we take a quick look? I have a sudden desire for poetry." Clara, who is likely bored out of her mind by the silks, agrees readily. She's on your side, not as a co-conspirator, but as someone who understands the subtle art of bending the rules without breaking them. The bookshop is a haven. It's cramped and dusty, with towering shelves that lean against each other like tired old friends. The air is thick with the beloved scent of aging paper and leather binding, a fragrance that speaks of stories waiting to be discovered. An elderly man with spectacles perched on the end of his nose looks up from a massive ledger, gives you a cursory nod, and returns to his work. You are free to explore. You find them in a small, tucked-away section under a sign that reads, Miscellany and Ladies' Pastimes. There are dozens of them. The language of flowers, the floral telegraph, the garland of flora, Kate Greenaway's language of flowers. They are mostly small, beautiful books, their covers embossed with intricate floral designs in gold leaf. This is your arsenal. You pull one from the shelf. It's a slim volume, bound in dark green leather. The title is simple, Le Langage de Fleurs. You open it carefully. The pages are thin, almost translucent, and filled with tiny, elegant script. It's an encyclopedia of sentiment. You flip through, your eyes scanning the entries. The structure is simple. On one side of the page, the name of a plant. On the other, its assigned meaning. It's a direct translation, a floral Rosetta Stone. The sheer number of entries is staggering. It seems every flower, every herb, every humble shrub has been conscripted into this silent army of meaning. This is a well-documented fact. At the height of the trend, there were hundreds of these dictionaries in circulation, both in Europe and America. While many meanings were standardized, the red rose for love, the lily for purity, there were regional variations and competing authors, creating a delightful layer of potential confusion. A flower could mean one thing in a London dictionary and something slightly different in a Parisian one. It was a fluid, evolving language. You find a quiet corner, pretending to be engrossed in a volume of sonnets, while you secretly begin your work. The tussie-mussy is back at home, but its image is burned into your mind. First, the lavender. You find it under L. Lavender, devotion, loyalty, and undying affection. A warm, steady meaning. Not the fiery passion of a rose, but something deeper, more constant. Next, the ivy. You trace your finger down the I section. Ivy, wedded love, fidelity, friendship, affection. Again, a theme of steadfastness emerges. This isn't a fleeting crush. The message feels solid, grounded. Then the mysterious star-shaped blue flowers. This is harder. You don't know their name. You flip through the illustrated plates in the back of another, more expensive-looking dictionary. And there it is. Bluebell or Scylla. You quickly find the entry. Bluebell. Humility, constancy, gratitude. Gratitude. That's a new thread in the tapestry. Loyalty, fidelity, and now gratitude. The message is becoming clearer, but also more complex. Finally, the fern. You find it easily. Fern. Sincerity, magic, fascination, and shelter. Sincerity. That feels important. It's a meta-commentary on the message itself, an assurance that the other sentiments are true. The sender is not playing games. But what about the arrangement itself? This is a lesser-known, more nuanced aspect of the language. The way the flowers were presented mattered. A flower handed over with the right hand meant yes, while the left hand meant no. A ribbon tied to the left indicated the message was about the sender, while a ribbon tied to the right meant it was about the recipient. Your ribbon was simple, tied centrally. What could that mean? The book offers a clue. A centered ribbon often implied a question, a sentiment offered up for consideration. Historians still puzzle over just how many people understood these finer grammatical points. Was the average person aware of the right-hand/left-hand rule? Or was that an affectation of the truly dedicated floriography nerds? It's like the difference between someone who knows a few phrases in a foreign language and a fluent speaker who understands all the grammar and idioms. The sender of your bouquet, it seems, is a fluent speaker. You piece it all together. Loyalty, fidelity, gratitude, sincerity, all wrapped around a central core of love. It's a declaration, but a humble and heartfelt one. It's not a demand for attention, but a quiet offering. It speaks of a deep, sincere affection, a feeling of gratitude for your existence, and a promise of constancy. The central question remains unspoken but heavily implied. Do you feel the same? You close the book, your mind buzzing. The message is beautiful, far more articulate than any stammered conversation in a crowded parlor could ever be. You feel seen, understood, and admired in a way that is profound and deeply moving. You purchase the small green book, your own personal key, and have it wrapped in plain brown paper. The package feels warm in your hands as you step back out into the noisy London street. The world looks the same, but for you it has fundamentally changed. It is no longer silent. It is singing a secret floral song, and you are finally learning the lyrics. With your new dictionary safely tucked away in your room, a whole new dimension of your world opens up. You start to see language everywhere. In the single rosebud in a vase on the mantelpiece, in the wilting daisies on a neighbor's windowsill, in the ivy crawling up the side of the church. The world has become a text, and you are its eager reader. But your mind keeps returning to the central theme of your mysterious bouquet, love. It is, after all, the beating heart of floriography, the subject that fueled its popularity and filled the pages of countless novels and poems. So you decide to dedicate your evening to study. With Clara's help, you've managed to light a small, low fire in your bedroom grate. A minor luxury that your parents would deem unnecessary, but one that Clara, a romantic at heart, understands is essential for a proper session of quiet contemplation. The room is filled with the soft, flickering light of the flames and the gentle scent of burning wood. You curl up in a chair, your precious green book in your lap, and begin your deep dive into the classic language of love and longing. The first and most obvious subject is the rose. You knew the red rose meant love, but you quickly discover a breathtaking level of nuance. A single, full-bloom red rose was, as you suspected, a straightforward declaration. I love you. But a red rosebud? That was a more delicate confession. Pure and lovely. A love that is still innocent and unfolding. A dark crimson rose spoke of mourning, but also of a deep, unconscious beauty. It's like learning the difference between saying, I like you, I'm falling for you, and I am completely, irrevocably devoted to you. The Victorians had a flower for every stage of the relationship. This incredible specificity is a well-documented fact. The floral dictionaries were filled with dozens of entries just for roses of different colors and states of bloom. A thornless rose meant love at first sight, a dangerous and impulsive admission. A white rose, often associated with purity and innocence, could also signify, I am worthy of you, a statement of confidence that bordered on arrogance. A yellow rose is a famous source of confusion. Today it signifies friendship, but in the Victorian era, It often meant jealousy or a decrease in love. Imagine the domestic drama a simple bouquet of yellow roses could cause. It was a conversational minefield, and you had to choose your words and your petals very carefully. You imagine composing a reply to your mysterious sender. What would you say back? If you felt a powerful, passionate love, you might send a bouquet of red tulips. The book tells you tulips, particularly red ones, are a declaration of love, a bold and almost theatrical gesture. The symbolism comes from a Turkish legend of a prince who, upon learning of the death of his beloved, rode his horse off a cliff, and a red tulip sprang up from each droplet of his blood. It's a dramatic backstory for a flower that now sits politely in springtime gardens. A bit much, perhaps. For a more gentle affection, a more budding romance, you might choose an apple blossom. Its meaning is preference, a delicate way of saying, I choose you above all others. It's a sweet, hopeful sentiment, a whisper rather than a shout, or perhaps a sprig of lilac, which signifies the first emotions of love. It's a perfect flower for the start of something new, a fragrant and optimistic promise. But what if the feeling is unrequited? What if you are the one pining from afar? The language has a deep and melancholic vocabulary for that, too. A weeping willow, of course, means mourning and forsaken love. A cyclamen says resignation and goodbye. A sad, quiet acceptance of fate. A daffodil, surprisingly, could signify unrequited love. All that bright, sunny cheerfulness hiding a secret sorrow is the floral equivalent of smiling through your tears. This is a lesser-known but fascinating part of the love language. Its ability to express not just the highs, but the painful, complicated lows. The Victorians, for all their outward propriety, clearly had a rich inner world of feeling, and they needed an outlet for all of it. A bouquet could be a soap opera in botanical form. Imagine a lover sending a bouquet containing a red rosebud, pure love, but also a sprig of lavender, devotion, tangled with a vine of honeysuckle, the bonds of love. That's a straightforward, happy message. But what if they added a single yellow carnation, disdain, hidden at the back? Suddenly, the message is poisoned. My pure and devoted love is bound to you, but I feel your disdain. It's passive aggression at its most beautiful. Historians still debate how much of this was genuine emotional expression versus a fashionable, romanticized performance. Were people truly pouring their deepest heartbreaks into these bouquets, or were they just enjoying the melodrama of it all? Perhaps it was both. In a world that demanded emotional restraint, floriography provided a stage. It allowed you to be the hero or the tragic figure of your own story, all under the guise of a simple, pretty gift. As the fire crackles and pops, you lean your head back, the book resting on your chest. You think of the person who sent you the tussie-mussy. They chose their words so carefully. Red rose for love? Yes, but surrounded by the steady, grounding promises of loyalty, sincerity, and gratitude. They didn't choose the fiery passion of the tulip or the wistful hope of the apple blossom. They chose to speak of a love that was constant and true. It was a message of profound reassurance. The weight of the small book is comforting. It's not just a dictionary, it's a script for the most important conversations you could ever have. The firelight dances on the ceiling, and you feel a sense of peace. You haven't decided on your reply yet, but for the first time you feel you have the words to say whatever you might need to. The language is yours now. After spending an evening wrapped in the warm, comforting language of love, your practical side begins to stir. Communication, you realize, isn't just about saying yes. It's also about having a clear, effective way to say no. In a society where a young woman's choices are so limited, the ability to issue a gentle or not-so-gentle rejection is a crucial form of power. A direct refusal could be seen as rude or unladylike, causing social awkwardness for everyone involved. But a floral refusal? That was artful. It was a way to decline an invitation, spurn an unwanted advance, or end a courtship with a degree of plausible deniability. Curious, you pull your green leather-bound dictionary closer to the morning light streaming through your window. You flip past the roses and lilies, seeking out the thorns. You want to learn the vocabulary of dismissal, the botany of the brush-off. And you find that the Victorians had, unsurprisingly, developed an extensive arsenal for this very purpose. The most famous and direct floral insult is the striped carnation. You find its entry easily. Striped carnation. Refusal. No, I cannot be with you. It's unequivocal. Sending a striped carnation was the floral equivalent of a slammed door. There was no ambiguity, no room for misinterpretation. It was a crisp, clean break. You can almost picture the scene. A hopeful young man receives a small bouquet, sees the jaunty, colorful stripes of the carnation, and feels his heart sink. This is brutal but efficient. This is a widely accepted meaning, one of the cornerstones of negative floriography. But what if you wanted to be more subtle? What if you wanted to express disdain rather than a simple refusal? For that, you would turn to the yellow carnation. Its meaning is stark. Disdain, contempt, rejection. It doesn't just say no. It says no, and I'm insulted you even asked. It's a flower with an attitude, a prim little bloom that is secretly judging you. You imagine receiving one and feeling a hot flush of shame. It's a flower that bites back. You continue your search for dismissive flora. You find the yellow hyacinth, a flower whose sunny color belies its cruel meaning, jealousy and bitterness. This wasn't just a rejection. It was an accusation. Sending a yellow hyacinth might imply that the suitor's affections were directed elsewhere, or that you were bitter about their advances. It's a complicated, emotionally charged message to pack into a single fragrant stalk. Then you stumble upon a truly wonderful, lesser-known piece of floral snark, the candy tuft. The name itself sounds sweet and unassuming, but its meaning is anything but. Candy tuft. Indifference. This, you decide, is the most devastating rejection of all. It's not angry, it's not sad, it's not even disdainful. It's just nothing. It's the floral equivalent of leaving someone on read. To receive a candy tuft is to be told that you have failed to make any impression whatsoever. Your passionate declaration of love has been met with a metaphorical shrug. It's a genius-level insult, a quiet, crushing blow delivered with a cheerful-looking white flower. As you read, you start to imagine the silent, savage conversations that must have taken place across London. Bouquets flying back and forth like passive-aggressive missiles. A suitor sends a red rosebud. I have a pure love for you. The young woman replies with a sprig of candy tuft. I literally could not care less. The suitor, wounded, sends back a yellow hyacinth. You're just jealous. The woman returns fire with a striped carnation, ending the conversation for good. It's a no from me. It's a silent, fragrant war fought on parlor tables and in entrance halls. Historians often focus on the romantic, sentimental side of floriography, but they sometimes wonder if its negative applications were just as common, if not more so. In a world where women had little agency, Was the language of flowers a rare opportunity to exercise control and express negative emotions without fear of reprisal? Who could prove that you meant the candy tuft to be insulting? You could always feign ignorance. Oh, goodness. I had no idea it meant indifference. I just thought it was so pretty. It was the perfect crime. This brings you back to the practicalities of responding to your own mysterious bouquet. The message you received was so heartfelt and sincere. But what if it hadn't been? What if it had been from someone you actively disliked? You now have the vocabulary to respond. You could send back a simple, polite striped carnation. Or, if you were feeling particularly mischievous, you could send a small bouquet containing candy tuft, a sprig of fool's parsley, folly, and perhaps a stem of basil, hatred. A message that says, I am indifferent to your foolish hatred. It's a powerful thought. The ability to not only understand the language but to speak it fluently gives you a sense of security. You close the book, the morning sun warming your face. You feel as if you've just been armed. You now know how to say, I love you, and you know how to say, don't even think about it. You can express the entire spectrum of human affection, from adoration to complete and utter indifference. You look at the vase where your tussy-mussy still sits, its petals now fully open. The message of love, loyalty, and gratitude seems even more precious now that you understand the alternatives. The sender chose the language of warmth and connection, not the cold vocabulary of rejection. And that knowledge makes all the difference. Your own reply, you decide, will be just as carefully considered. It will be a message of kindness, whether it is a yes or a no. The power, you realize, is not just in what you say, but in how you choose to say it. After exploring the dramatic highs of romantic confession and the icy lows of floral rejection, you begin to wonder about the spaces in between. Surely, life wasn't just a series of passionate courtships and dramatic dismissals. What about the other relationships that sustained you? What about the steady, quiet comfort of friendship? You think of Clara, with her knowing glances and silent solidarity. You think of your cousin, who lives in the countryside and with whom you share a lively correspondence. These relationships are the bedrock of your life, as important as any potential romance. Did the language of flowers have a vocabulary for them too? You open your little green book once more, but this time you're not looking for passion or scorn. You're looking for warmth, for camaraderie, for the simple, unassuming language of friendship. And you find it nestled among the more dramatic entries. The Victorians, it turns out, had a rich and nuanced way to speak of platonic love, a way to say, I value you as a friend, without any danger of it being misinterpreted as a romantic advance. One of the most prominent flowers of friendship you discover is acacia. You find its entry and read, Acacia, friendship, secret love. The dual meaning is intriguing. It suggests a friendship that is cherished, perhaps one that is kept private and away from the prying eyes of society. It's the perfect flower to represent a confidant, someone with whom you share secrets. Sending a sprig of acacia would be a way of reaffirming that bond of trust. Then you find the entry for geraniums, specifically the oak-leaf geranium. Its meaning is simple and direct, true friendship. Not the fleeting acquaintance made over tea, but the real, solid, dependable kind. It's a flower that feels sturdy and reliable, just like a good friend. You make a mental note of it. It's a flower you might send to your cousin after receiving one of her long, funny letters. It would be a way of saying, your friendship means the world to me. This is a historically accepted meaning, a common floral symbol for platonic affection that allowed friends to express their bond clearly. As you continue to explore, you find a whole garden of friendly sentiments. Periwinkle, with its lovely blue-violet flowers, meant tender recollections or pleasures of memory. It was the perfect flower to send to a childhood friend, a way of saying, "I'm thinking of our happy times together." A small bouquet of periwinkle could be a nostalgic conversation in itself, a shared glance back at a cherished past. One of the most charming and lesser-known symbols you find is for the humble strawberry tree, or arbutus. Its meaning is wonderfully specific. You are the only one I love, but in a platonic sense of esteem and admiration. It's a way of telling a friend they are unique and irreplaceable. It's a beautiful, elevated sentiment, a way to pay a high compliment without straying into romantic territory. You can imagine sending it to a mentor or an older relative you deeply admire. This discovery adds another layer to your understanding of Victorian society. It wasn't all just a marriage market. Friendship, especially female friendship, was a vital source of emotional and intellectual support. In a world where women's lives were often restricted, these bonds were a lifeline. They created a private sphere where women could be themselves, share their hopes and fears, and critique the very society that constrained them. The language of flowers provided them with a private channel to nurture these essential relationships. Historians still debate the full extent to which floriography was used among friends versus lovers, because so much of the surviving literature and popular culture focused on romance. The Platonic uses of the language are often overlooked. Was a bouquet of oak-leaf geraniums as common as a red rose? Probably not. But for those who knew the language, it offered a precious tool. It allowed for expressions of affection that the rigid social etiquette of the time simply didn't have a script for. You couldn't just hug your friend and tell her she was brilliant. That would be an unseemly display of emotion. But you could send her a small bouquet containing arbutus and acacia, and she would understand completely. You think again about your own mysterious tussie-mussy. The sender included ivy, which carried the dual meaning of fidelity in both romance and friendship. They also included lavender for devotion. These are sentiments that could, in another context, be purely platonic. The red rose at the center is what firmly anchors the message in the realm of romantic love. But the other flowers speak of a foundation of friendship and respect. The sender doesn't just love you, they like you, they value you. This realization is deeply comforting. It suggests a relationship built not just on fleeting passion but on a solid ground of mutual admiration and loyalty. The message is even more beautiful than you first thought. You close the book and look out the window. Two women are walking on the other side of the street, their heads close together in conversation, sharing a parasol against the afternoon sun. They laugh at something, a shared, private joke. You see them not just as two women, but as two friends, navigating their world together. And you imagine them speaking their own secret language, a language of support and understanding, perhaps with a shared knowledge of what a simple sprig of periwinkle can mean. The world of flowers is bigger than you imagined. It's not just for star-crossed lovers. It's for allies, for confidants, for the quiet, unsung heroes of your everyday life, your friends. And you feel a sudden urge to compose a bouquet for Clara, just to say thank you. Armed with a growing vocabulary of love, rejection, and friendship, you are about to venture into the ultimate Victorian social arena, the ballroom. Your family has been invited to a grand ball at the home of a prominent city merchant, a man with a large house and 3 unmarried daughters. The invitation has been on the mantelpiece for a week, a crisp, intimidating promise of an evening of scrutiny and strategic socializing. Tonight is the night. As you stand before the mirror, with Clara making the final adjustments to your dress, you feel a familiar flutter of anxiety. But this time, it's mixed with a new sense of curiosity. You're not just going as a participant tonight, you're going as an observer, a linguist in a field of living, breathing floral conversations. Your dress is a pale blue silk, the color of a summer sky just before dusk, and pinned to your bodice, right over your heart, is your silent conversational partner for the evening. It's a small, carefully chosen posy. You've included a white violet for modesty, a sprig of myrtle for good luck, and a single, perfect white camellia. This one you chose very carefully from your dictionary. A white camellia means you're adorable, but it also carries a quieter, more introspective meaning, perfected loveliness. It's a statement of quiet confidence, not arrogance. It's your armor. As you step out of the carriage and into the dazzling, gaslit entrance hall, the scale of the event is almost overwhelming. The air is warm and alive, buzzing with the sound of 100 conversations, the rustle of silk, and the soaring notes of a string quartet playing a waltz. The scent of perfume, pomade, and hot wax hangs heavy in the air. It's a sensory overload. But as your eyes adjust, you start to see them. The flowers, they are everywhere. They are worn in the hair, pinned to dresses, tucked into the lapels of gentlemen's coats, and, most importantly, held in the hand. This is a well-documented fact of Victorian balls. The small, handheld bouquet, or ball bouquet, was an essential accessory. It wasn't just decorative. It was functional. It gave a lady something to do with her hands, and its fragrance could be a welcome relief from the often stifling heat of the crowded ballroom. You see a young woman across the room fanning herself with a beautifully constructed bouquet of pink roses and baby's breath. She catches the eye of a gentleman standing near the orchestra. She brings the bouquet to her lips. You don't even need your book for this one. It's one of the most famous floral gestures. Bringing a bouquet to one's lips is a clear, yet deniable, invitation. It can mean I desire to speak with you, or it can be a more direct, flirtatious signal. The gentleman, a handsome man with an impressive mustache, gives a subtle nod and begins to make his way through the crowd. A silent conversation initiated and confirmed, all in a matter of seconds. This is a fascinating, if lesser-known, aspect of floriography. Its use in real-time, gestural communication. The flowers themselves had meaning, but so did the way you held them. Pointing the bouquet downwards meant, I am not interested. Holding it over your heart, as you are doing, was a sign of sincerity and truthfulness. Angling it towards someone was a direct way of addressing them. It was a silent, graceful sign language. You accept a dance from a young man your father clearly approves of. As you move through the elegant, swirling patterns of the waltz, you notice the flower in his lapel. It's a sprig of white heather. You recall the meaning from your studies. Good luck or protection. It's a safe, charming choice. It says nothing personal, but it conveys a general sense of goodwill. He is a polite, if unexciting, conversationalist. The white heather suits him perfectly. Later, while catching your breath near a potted palm, you witness a more complex exchange. A woman with fiery red hair and a dress of emerald green is speaking with two suitors. One offers her his dance card. She taps the bouquet she is holding, a vibrant mix of yellow tulips, hopeless love, and geraniums, stupidity, against her chin. The gesture means, I pity you. The first suitor, looking utterly confused, retreats. She then turns to the second suitor and holds the same bouquet out to him. The gesture is a question. He responds by touching the single white rose in his own lapel. Silence. He is telling her he cannot speak of his feelings here. A look of understanding passes between them. It's a miniature play, a silent drama of rejection and secret understanding, all performed with flowers. Historians still puzzle over the nuances of these ballroom conversations. How much was understood by everyone, and how much was a private code between just two people? It's possible that couples or close friends developed their own specific meanings, a personal dialect of the broader floral language. A daisy might mean something unique to them, a secret shared in plain sight. The evening wears on, a whirlwind of music, dancing, and polite conversation. You navigate it with a newfound sense of control. Your small posy feels like a shield and a key. When a particularly dull man asks you to dance a second time, you simply angle your bouquet downwards as you fan yourself. He gets the message and moves on. When you see the quiet, scholarly gentleman from church across the room, you briefly touch your white camellia, a gesture of modest greeting. He sees you, and a small, genuine smile touches his lips. As you finally ride home in the carriage, the cool night air a welcome relief, you feel a sense of triumph. You survived the ballroom. More than that, you understood it. You saw the secret currents of meaning flowing beneath the surface of the polite, glittering spectacle. The ballroom wasn't just a marriage market. It was a theater of silent communication, and tonight you were not just in the audience. You were on the stage, speaking the language fluently. The small, slightly wilted posy on your dress feels like a trophy. The day after the ball, the city feels too loud, too gray. The memory of the glittering ballroom, with its silent, floral dramas, has left you craving something green and quiet. The structured, artificial world of social etiquette suddenly feels exhausting. You feel a deep need to reconnect with the source of your new language, not the cut, arranged, and curated versions you saw last night, but the living, breathing plants themselves. You decide you will visit your aunt who lives on the outskirts of London, the one whose garden is her life's work. You tell your family you are feeling faint from the previous night's excitement and require a day of country air. It is the perfect, unassailable excuse. The journey is a slow, pleasant transition from the dense, noisy heart of the city to the leafy, spacious lanes of the suburbs. When you arrive, your aunt greets you with a warm hug and a cup of tea, and then, as you knew she would, she suggests a tour of her garden. This is her true parlor, her real drawing room. And as you step out of the French doors and into the sunlight, you realize you are not just entering a garden. You are stepping inside a living, breathing diary. The Victorian garden, you are beginning to understand, was not just a collection of pretty plants. It was a statement, a meticulously planned, highly symbolic landscape. The layout, the choice of plants, the way paths guided you from one section to another. It was all part of a larger narrative. This concept of the garden room, a space designed to evoke a specific feeling or tell a story, is a well-documented feature of Victorian horticulture. Your aunt's garden is a perfect example. You begin your walk down a path lined with tall, elegant foxgloves. Their bell-shaped flowers, in shades of purple and white, are beautiful, but you recall their meaning from your dictionary. Insincerity. It's an odd choice to begin a garden path. Aunt, you ask, why begin with foxgloves? She smiles, a knowing, slightly mischievous smile. Because, she says, they remind me to be wary of charming facades. Not everything that looks pretty is wholesome. So warning, my dear, a little reminder to look deeper. You are stunned. Your quiet, unassuming aunt has a streak of cynical poetry you never knew existed. The path of insincerity opens into a small, circular clearing dominated by a magnificent oak tree. Beneath it, in the dappled shade, grows a lush carpet of moss. The oak, your aunt explains, gesturing with her trowel, is for hospitality and strength, and the moss, of course, is for maternal love. This is her heart, the center of her home, a place of strength and loving welcome, but one you can only reach after acknowledging the existence of insincerity in the world. The garden is telling a story of hard-won wisdom. You continue on, following a winding trail. You pass a bed of bright yellow primroses, early youth and I can't live without you, planted next to a patch of purple crocuses, youthful gladness. This, your aunt tells you, is her memory corner, a tribute to her own girlhood. A little further on, a stone bench sits under a trellis heavy with climbing roses and honeysuckle. You know these meanings by heart now. Love and the bonds of love. It's a romantic, secluded spot, but right next to it, planted almost as a joke, is a single, grumpy-looking thistle, misanthropy or austerity. Your aunt laughs when she sees you notice it. That's for my late husband. He was a wonderful man, but he did not enjoy visitors. This playful, personal use of the language is a lesser-known but delightful aspect of the floral world. While dictionaries provided a general framework, people felt free to adapt and personalize the meanings. A flower could take on a special significance within a family or a circle of friends. Your aunt's thistle isn't just a symbol of misanthropy. It's a specific, fond, and humorous portrait of her husband. Her garden is not just a collection of general sentiments. It's her autobiography written in leaves and petals. Historians often wonder how many gardens of this era were designed with such a deep narrative intent. Was your aunt a rare exception, a botanical poet? Or was this kind of symbolic gardening more widespread than we realize? Without written plans or diaries detailing the gardener's intentions, the secret stories of many Victorian gardens are lost to us forever. We can only guess at the meaning behind a particular pairing of plants, the forgotten jokes and memorials growing silently in the soil. You trail your fingers over a soft lamb's ear plant, support, as you walk. You see a patch of borage, courage, near the vegetable patch. You notice that the ivy, fidelity, is allowed to grow freely on the wall of the house, but the bindweed, humility but also extinguishes, is ruthlessly pulled out. Every choice is deliberate. The final section of the garden is a quiet, shaded area near the back wall. Here, the plants are more subdued. There are ferns, sincerity, rosemary, remembrance, and a large planting of rue, regret or sorrow. But in the middle of it all, reaching for the sun, is a single, beautiful sunflower, adoration and lofty thoughts. It's a place for quiet contemplation, for acknowledging sorrow and regret, but with a final, overwhelming turn towards adoration and light. As you stand there, breathing in the scent of damp earth and green leaves, you feel a profound sense of peace. The language of flowers, you realize, is not just about sending messages to others. It's about creating a conversation with yourself. This garden is your aunt's inner world made visible. It's a space where she can process her memories, honor her loves, laugh at her past, and cultivate her own personal philosophy. You came here seeking a break from the city, but you found something more. You found a new way to use the language you've been learning. It can be a tool for introspection, a way to shape your own environment to reflect your inner life. You look back at the path you've walked, from the warning of the foxgloves to the final, hopeful sunflower. It's a story of a life lived with awareness, humor, and grace. And you think for the first time about what your own garden would look like. Your visit to your aunt's narrative garden has planted a new seed of curiosity in your mind. Her playful use of a thistle, her cynical foxgloves. It makes you realize that the floral language extends far beyond the cultivated, well-behaved blooms of the aristocracy. What about the commoners? The forgotten flora of the fields and hedgerows? What did a simple weed have to say for itself? The thought is delightfully absurd. You imagine a high society lady receiving a bouquet composed entirely of things her gardener would have spent the morning trying to eradicate. Back in your room, you spend the next rainy afternoon with your little green book. But this time you specifically seek out the humble, the overlooked, and the downright weedy. You want to explore the surprisingly chatty world of the plants that grow in the cracks, the ones that thrive on neglect. And you discover a whole new dialect of the floral language, one that is earthier, stranger, and in many ways more interesting. You start with the most common of all, the dandelion, that cheerful yellow sunburst that dots lawns and meadows. You find its entry and a smile spreads across your face. Dandelion, rustic oracle, coquetry, faithfulness. It's a flower of fortune-telling, the kind you blow to see if your love is true. It's playful and flirtatious. Sending a dandelion wasn't an insult. It was a cheeky, rustic come-on. It was the countryside equivalent of a flirtatious glance over a fan. This is a historically accepted meaning, rooted in folklore that predates the Victorian fad by centuries. Next, you look up the nettle, a plant you've been taught to avoid your entire life. Surely its meaning must be negative. You find it, stinging nettle, cruelty, slander. That makes sense. But right below it is another entry for the flower of the nettle. You are spiteful. The specificity is hilarious. You can send the leaves to accuse someone of general cruelty, but the flower is for a much more direct and personal insult. It's the botanical equivalent of saying, it's not just your actions that are cruel, it is your very nature. This is where the language gets wonderfully petty. You find burdock, the plant with the sticky burrs that cling to your skirts after a country walk. Its meaning? Importunity, touch me not. It's the flower of clingy, unwelcome attention. You can just picture sending a large burdock leaf to a suitor who simply won't take a hint. It's a brilliantly passive-aggressive and slightly threatening message. This exploration of weeds is a lesser-known, but fascinating corner of floriography. While the grand dictionaries focused on garden-worthy specimens, the language of the common people, rooted in herbalism and folklore, was rich with these meanings. A farmer's daughter might not have access to a hothouse camellia, but she would know that a sprig of clover could wish someone good luck, and a strand of bindweed could be a comment on a suffocating relationship. You find an entry for milkweed. Milkweed, hope in misery. A beautiful, poignant sentiment for a plant often considered a nuisance. It suggests that even in the most desolate of places, a small seed of hope can take root. You find chicory, the little blue flower that grows by the roadside. This meaning is frugality. It's a simple, pragmatic flower, a symbol of making do with what you have. You could imagine weaving it into a bouquet for a friend who was going through hard times, a message of solidarity and respect for their resilience. Historians still debate how much this cottage floriography overlapped with the more formal language of the upper classes. Did a lady in Mayfair and a milkmaid in Devon understand the same meaning for a daisy? For some flowers, like the daisy, innocence, or the buttercup, childishness, the meanings were likely universal. For others, like the chicory or the burdock, the language may have been more class-specific. It's a reminder that this wasn't one single, monolithic language, but a collection of local dialects, each shaped by the environment and the people who used it. You come across the entry for Queen Anne's lace, with its delicate, intricate white flower heads. Its meaning is sanctuary or fantasy. It's a flower of refuge, of safe havens and daydreams. It's the perfect symbol for the very act you are engaged in, escaping into a private world of meaning and imagination. Then your eyes land on the entry for grass, just common, everyday grass. You'd never even considered it could have a meaning. Grass, submission, utility. It's the ultimate symbol of quiet usefulness and bending to the will of others. It's a little sad, but also profoundly true. You think of the endless, manicured lawns of the wealthy estates, the grass kept perfectly in its place. But you also think of the wild grasses in the meadows, growing free and bowing only to the wind. The discovery of this whole other vocabulary is liberating. It democratizes the language. You don't need a fancy greenhouse or an expensive florist to speak it. You just need to pay attention. A message of hope can be found in a vacant lot. A declaration of love can be made with a field of dandelions. A stern rejection can be issued with a well-aimed burr. This knowledge makes your world feel richer, more textured. The line between a flower and a weed begins to blur. They are all just plants, and they all have something to say. The snobbery of the formal garden seems silly now. The most eloquent and honest messages might not come from a pampered rose, but from a stubborn little weed pushing its way through a crack in the pavement, offering its own small, wild piece of poetry to the world. You close your book, feeling a new sense of respect for the resilience and quiet chatter of the overlooked green things of the world. Your journey into the language of flowers has, so far, felt like a distinctly English pursuit. The stuffy parlors, the grand ballrooms, the narrative gardens. It all seems deeply rooted in the peculiar social climate of Victorian Britain. But as you sit by the window, watching the gray London drizzle streak the glass, a question begins to form in your mind. Where did this all come from? Surely, this intricate, poetic, and slightly bizarre system of communication didn't just spring fully formed from the mind of an English lady with too much time on her hands. There must be deeper roots. Driven by this new curiosity, you turn to the introduction of your little green dictionary, a section you had previously skipped in your haste to get to the translations. You begin to read, and the story that unfolds takes you far from the damp, green hills of England, transporting you to the sun-drenched, exotic world of the Ottoman Empire. The book explains that the concept was introduced to English society in the early 18th century, long before the Victorians got their hands on it and turned it into a national obsession. The credit, it says, belongs to one remarkable woman, Lady Mary Wortley Montagu. You've heard her name before. She was an aristocrat, a writer, and a famous beauty, but you didn't know about her connection to your new favorite hobby. You read on, captivated. In 1716, Lady Mary's husband was appointed the British ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, and she traveled with him to Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. While there, she immersed herself in the local culture, and she became fascinated by a Turkish tradition called Salam. This wasn't a formal, dictionary-based language like the one you've been studying. It was a more fluid, playful, and poetic rhyming game. This is a well-documented historical fact. Salam was a folk tradition where objects, not just flowers, were used to send messages based on words they rhymed with. Lady Mary described it in her famous letters home, which were later published and became a sensation. You read an excerpt quoted in your book. "There is no color, no flower, no weed, no fruit, herb, pebble or feather that has not a verse belonging to it. And you may quarrel, reproach, or send letters of passion, friendship or civility, or even of news, without ever inking your fingers. The idea is intoxicating. It's a language of things. A pearl could mean, I value you above all others, but also might be used simply because it rhymed with a word for darling in Turkish. A bit of straw could convey a complaint, perhaps rhyming with a word for have mercy. It was a form of living poetry, a game of associations and rhymes that was deeply embedded in the culture of the Turkish harems. This is a lesser-known but crucial detail that often gets lost in the story. Lady Mary observed this practice within the secluded world of the Ottoman harems, where women, largely isolated from public life, had developed their own rich, complex systems of communication. Floriography, in its earliest European form, was therefore not just an import from another country, but from another world, the private, female-centric world of the harem. It was a language developed by women, for women, in a space where their public voices were silenced. The parallels to the constrained lives of Victorian women are impossible to ignore. A system born of seclusion in the East found fertile ground in the repressed society of the West. You lean back in your chair, trying to picture it. The vibrant colors of the Topkapi Palace, the scent of spices and jasmine in the air, the sound of fountains splashing in a hidden courtyard. You imagine women, lounging on silk cushions, composing messages not just with flowers, but with a whole vocabulary of objects. A clove to represent a sweet word, a piece of soap to signify feeling washed out with longing, a mirror to say, do not let me see another. It's a far more tactile and whimsical system than the rigid one-to-one translations in your Victorian dictionary. Historians still debate just how accurately Lady Mary portrayed Salam. Was she romanticizing it? Did she misunderstand some of the nuances? It's likely she simplified a complex folk tradition for her English audience. She presented it as a secret love language, which was exactly what the English public, with their growing appetite for exotic tales from the Orient, wanted to hear. When her letters were published, the idea took hold of the public imagination. The French were the first to truly run with it, publishing the first dedicated floral dictionary, Le Langage des Fleurs, in 1819. This book, by a writer under the pseudonym Charlotte de Latour, is the true ancestor of the little green volume in your hands. It stripped away the rhyming game aspect of Salam and assigned fixed meanings to each flower, creating the more systematic, dictionary-based language that the Victorians would later adopt with such gusto. The fluid, poetic game of the East was translated, simplified, and codified for a Western audience. The magic was replaced with rules. So, the straight line you imagined, from a stuffy English parlor to a secret floral code, is not a straight line at all. It's a winding path that starts in a Turkish harem, travels through the letters of a brilliant aristocratic lady, gets translated and systematized in France, and finally blossoms into a full-blown craze in Victorian England. The knowledge makes your own practice feel connected to a much longer, more global story. It's a story about women finding ways to speak when they are told to be silent, a tradition passed from the secluded women of the East to the constrained women of the West. Your little Tussie Mussie, the one that started this whole journey, is the descendant of a pearl, a stick of cinnamon, and a feather, all carrying verses in a language you'll never know. The rain continues to tap against the window pane, but the room no longer feels small or confined. It feels connected, by an invisible thread of shared human experience, to a sun-drenched courtyard thousands of miles and more than a century away. Your deep dive into the history of floriography has left you with a new appreciation for its journey. From the harems of Constantinople to the parlors of London, it's been a long and winding road. But as you sit with this knowledge, a new, more practical question emerges. One that smells less of poetry and more of damp earth and cold, hard cash. If everyone in London suddenly decided they needed to speak with flowers, who was supplying them? An entire language based on a physical commodity must have had an economy behind it. A secret language needs a secret marketplace. You decide to investigate the business of selling these secret sentiments. Your ever-reliable accomplice, Clara, knows just the place. She tells you of the new Covent Garden flower market. Not the sprawling, chaotic market of today, but its more refined, glass-roofed ancestor. It's the beating heart of London's floral trade, the source of the bouquets that grace the city's ballrooms and parlor tables. You once again invent a plausible errand, this time a need for fresh lavender to make sachets, and you set off into the city, your curiosity piqued. The moment you step under the great iron and glass canopy of the market hall, you are hit by a wave of sensory information. The air is cool and damp, thick with the combined fragrance of 1,000 different flowers and the green, chlorophyll-rich scent of snapped stems. It's a symphony of smells, from the heady perfume of lilies to the peppery spice of carnations and the clean, almost citrusy scent of fresh roses. The sound is a low, energetic hum, vendors calling out their prices, the rustle of paper-wrapped bouquets, the clatter of carts on the stone floor. This is a world away from the quiet, dusty bookshop or your aunt's serene garden. This is commerce. Men in heavy aprons haul wooden crates overflowing with flowers, their boots stained with mud and grass. Women with nimble fingers stand at stalls, expertly trimming thorns from roses and arranging complex bouquets with lightning speed. It's a beautiful, fragrant factory. The rise of the middle class in the Victorian era created a huge new market for what were once considered luxuries. Flowers were no exception. This explosion in demand is a well-documented historical fact. It drove innovation, leading to the development of massive commercial greenhouses, or glasshouses, on the outskirts of London. These structures, marvels of modern engineering, allowed growers to cultivate exotic and out-of-season flowers like orchids and camellias, once the sole preserve of the fabulously wealthy. Now, a moderately successful merchant's wife could afford a taste of the exotic. You wander past a stall overflowing with roses of every conceivable color. There are deep reds, delicate pinks, pristine whites, and even the controversial yellow ones, all neatly arranged in buckets of water. The vendor, a woman with a no-nonsense expression and dirt under her fingernails, is haggling with a customer over the price of a dozen. It's a transaction of pure business, but the product being sold is pure poetry. A lesser-known aspect of this floral boom was the rise of the professional florist. Before this era, flowers were typically sold by gardeners or market gardeners directly from their own plots. The Victorian florist, however, was something new. They were not just sellers. They were artists and, more importantly, translators. A customer could come in and say, "I wish to send a message of gentle admiration, but with a hint of melancholy, to a young lady I cannot court openly." The florist, armed with a deep knowledge of the floral language, would then compose the perfect bouquet, a tussy-mussy that was both beautiful and grammatically correct. They were the scribes of this silent language. You see a young, well-dressed gentleman in quiet consultation with one such florist at a corner stall. He speaks in a low, earnest voice, and the florist, a man with a thoughtful expression, nods along, occasionally reaching out to select a specific bloom from his collection. He chooses a sprig of heliotrope, devotion, a few stems of jonquil, I desire a return of affection, and a spray of delicate lily of the valley, return of happiness. He arranges them carefully, wraps them in paper and lace, and hands the small, potent message to the young man, who pays him and hurries off. You have just witnessed a secret being professionally ghostwritten. Historians still wonder about the dynamics of these transactions. Did florists ever act as counselors, advising clients on the potential repercussions of sending a particularly harsh or forward bouquet? Did they keep the secrets of their customers? A successful florist must have been one of the best-informed people in the neighborhood, privy to the secret courtships, the rejections, and the scandals of the entire community, all told through the medium of petals and leaves. You make your way to a stall selling herbs and simpler flowers, where you purchase your lavender. As the vendor wraps it for you, you spot a small, sad-looking bucket of striped carnations. Not very popular today, are they? You ask, gesturing to the flowers of refusal. The vendor gives you a wry smile. Depends on the day, miss, she says. Some days I can't keep 'em in stock. Love is a fickle business. Her words hang in the air as you make your way back through the bustling market. She's right. This entire, beautiful, fragrant industry, with its massive greenhouses, its skilled florists, and its bustling market, is built on the most unpredictable and volatile of human emotions. It's an economy of longing, a supply chain of sentiment. Stepping back out into the gray London street, the bundle of lavender in your hands feels like a tangible piece of this world. Its scent is clean and calming, but your mind is buzzing with the chaotic, vibrant energy of the market. You have seen the engine room of the language of flowers, and it is a place of hard work, shrewd business, and the quiet, constant business of turning feelings into flowers. The seasons of your floral education have turned. You've moved from the initial spring of discovery, through the summer of fluent conversation, and into a more reflective autumn. You've mastered the language of love and friendship. You've learned the harsh dialect of rejection and warning, and you've even explored the wild grammar of weeds. But as you become more and more fluent, you start to notice something strange. You see the language less and less in the world around you. The bouquets that arrive at your door are now more often just pretty collections of flowers, with no discernible message. The ladies you see at social gatherings seem to be choosing their floral accessories based on how well they match their dresses, not on their symbolic meaning. A slow, gentle fading is taking place. The language is falling silent. You begin to ponder why. Why would such a beautiful, useful, and intricate system of communication simply wither away? You look around your own life for clues. Just last week, your family had a telephone installed in the hallway. It's a strange, imposing wooden box with a brass mouthpiece, and everyone is slightly afraid of it. But your father used it to have a direct, real-time conversation with a business associate miles away. There was no need for a messenger, no delay, no risk of a letter being lost. The communication was instant and clear. This technological shift is, of course, a major and well-documented reason for the decline of floriography. The invention and proliferation of the telephone and later, the advent of the affordable postal service with penny postcards offered new, more direct ways to communicate. Why go to the trouble of composing a complex botanical message when you could simply pick up a receiver and speak, or dash off a quick, cheap note? The beautiful, subtle art of the tussie-mussy started to seem inefficient, a relic of a slower, more constrained time. But it wasn't just technology. Society itself was changing. You feel it in the air, in the conversations you overhear, in the articles you read in the newspaper. The rigid, suffocating social etiquette of the high Victorian era is beginning to relax its grip. The chaperone, while still present, is no longer the absolute authority she once was. Young men and women are finding more opportunities for unchaperoned interaction. A game of tennis, a bicycle ride, a supervised but more relaxed group outing. The need for a secret, coded language lessons when you can simply have a semi-normal conversation. You see it in fashion, too. The heavy, restrictive corsets and bustles are slowly giving way to more natural, comfortable silhouettes. The very posture of society is changing, becoming less stiff, less formal. This loosening of social rules meant that expressing oneself directly was no longer the scandalous act it once was. The monster of impropriety was losing its teeth. This is a lesser-known, more nuanced reason for the decline. The language of flowers became a victim of its own success. For a time, it was an incredibly fashionable, almost mainstream fad. The floral dictionaries sold by the thousands. The meanings of the most common flowers were widely known. But like any fad, its popularity eventually led to its downfall. It became overused, commercialized, and, in the eyes of the new, modern generation, a bit silly and old-fashioned. It was the language of their parents, a sentimental relic of a bygone era. The bright young things of the emerging Edwardian age, with their faster pace of life and more modern sensibilities, had little time for the quaint romanticism of talking with daisies. Historians still debate the exact timeline of this decline. It didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, gradual fading, like a flower losing its petals one by one. In some rural areas and among more traditional families, the language likely persisted for much longer. But in the fashionable, forward-looking circles of the cities, its vocabulary became forgotten, its grammar lost to time. What was once a living, breathing language became a historical curiosity, a piece of charming trivia. You feel a strange sense of melancholy as you contemplate this. You have become fluent in a dying language. It's like being the last native speaker of a forgotten tongue. You have this rich, beautiful tool for communication, but fewer and fewer people to share it with. You feel a deep sense of gratitude that you got to experience it at all, a quiet connection to the generations of women before you who relied on this silent, fragrant code to navigate their lives. You think of the mysterious sender of your first tussie-mussy. Who were they? You never did find out for sure, though your suspicions have long settled on the quiet, scholarly gentleman from church, with whom you have since had several, surprisingly direct and delightful conversations. The bouquet was a product of its time, a message that perhaps could only have been sent in that specific cultural moment, when feelings were high and the means of expressing them were few. It was a bridge across a chasm of silence, and it served its purpose beautifully. The sun is setting, casting a warm, golden light across your room. It feels like the end of an era. The world is getting louder, faster, more direct. And perhaps in many ways that is a good thing. But you can't help but feel that something precious is being lost. The subtlety, the poetry, the simple, quiet beauty of saying something important with a handful of flowers. The language may be fading, but for you, it will never be forgotten. It is a part of you now, a secret garden you can carry in your mind forever. The knowledge that the floral language is fading from the world doesn't fill you with despair. Instead, it sparks a quiet, new resolve. It makes the act of speaking it feel more precious, more deliberate. You decide that you will compose one final, perfect bouquet. This won't be a reply to a message received or a strategic statement for a social event. This bouquet will be for you, It will be a summary of your journey, a tangible expression of what this silent, beautiful language has come to mean to you. It will be your own personal floral manifesto. You decide to make a day of it, a personal pilgrimage. You take the carriage out to the countryside, to a place where the wild fields meet the manicured edges of a public park. Here, you have access to both the cultivated and the wild, the formal and the informal dialects of the language you have come to love. You carry a small basket and a pair of shears, feeling like a botanist on a very specific, very personal expedition. You begin in the wilder meadows. First, you find a patch of sturdy, unassuming grass. You snip a few blades, remembering their meaning, submission and utility. You include this not as a sign of defeat, but as a respectful nod to the world you were born into, the foundation of rules and expectations that made this entire journey necessary in the first place. It is the starting point of your story. Nearby, growing defiantly in a patch of dry soil, is a cluster of dandelions. You smile and add a few of their sunny, cheerful heads to your basket. Rustic oracle coquetry. This represents the playful, rebellious spark that first set you on your path. The cheeky, curious spirit that wanted to find a loophole in the stuffy rules of society. This is a well-documented meaning, a nod to the folklore that underpins the entire floral tradition. You then move towards the more cultivated gardens of the park. You find a rose bush, not with perfect red blooms, but with deep pink ones. You carefully select a single half-open bud. Pink rose, grace, happiness, gentle love. This is for the warmth and affection you've discovered, not just the potential for romantic love, but the love of friends, of family, of knowledge itself. It's a softer, more encompassing love than the fiery passion of the red rose. Your search for a specific, lesser-known flower takes you to a shaded, woody part of the garden. And there it is, a small patch of Queen Anne's lace. You snip a single lacy floret. Sanctuary, fantasy. This is for the private, imaginative world that the language has opened up for you. The bookshop, your aunt's garden. The quiet corners of your own mind where you could decipher and compose these secret messages. It represents the inner refuge you have built for yourself. Next, you need a touch of wisdom. You find a small, fragrant rosemary bush. You cut a single aromatic sprig. Rosemary, remembrance. This is for the history you've uncovered. For Lady Mary Wortley Montagu in her Turkish garden. For the generations of women who spoke this language before you. It's a promise that you will not forget them, that you will carry their tradition forward, even if only in your own heart. Now for the final, most important piece. You need something to represent the future, your own voice. You walk for a while before you see it. A magnificent, towering sunflower turned towards the afternoon sun. Sunflower, lofty thoughts, adoration. But you interpret it in your own way. For you, it means facing the future, seeking the light, holding your head high. It is a symbol of confidence and optimism. It is the perfect conclusion to your story. Historians often focus on the messages sent between people, but they can only speculate on the internal, personal use of floriography. Did people compose bouquets for themselves, as a form of journaling or meditation? It's a beautiful thought that this language was not just for communication, but for self-reflection. Your act of creating this bouquet feels like a private, intimate ritual, one that countless others may have secretly performed. Back in your room, you begin to arrange your collection. You start with the humble grass as the base. You add the playful dandelions, the gentle pink rose, the delicate Queen Anne's lace, and the thoughtful rosemary. finally, standing tall above it all, you place the proud sunflower. You tie the stems together with a simple blue ribbon. In your dictionary, blue means truth and intellect. You are not sending a message of flirtation or romance. You are binding these sentiments together with the thread of your own understanding, your own truth. You place the finished bouquet in a simple vase on your windowsill. It is a strange and beautiful arrangement. It's a mix of the wild and the tame, the humble and the grand. It's a story. It says, "From a world of submission, a spirit of playful curiosity emerged. I have found grace and gentle love, and I have built a sanctuary in my own mind. I will remember the past, and I will face the future with my head held high, seeking the light." It is the most honest and complete thing you have ever said. You didn't need to speak a word. The flowers speak for you. The language may be fading from the world, but in this room, in this vase, it is vibrantly, beautifully alive. And it is yours. The day is done. The last of the sun's golden light has faded from your window, and the room has settled into a soft, deep twilight. The bouquet you created sits on the sill, its silhouette dark against the deepening blue of the sky. The story has been told. Now it is time for rest. Let the gentle scent of the flowers you gathered, real or imagined, fill the quiet air around you. Take a slow, deep breath, and as you exhale, feel the busy thoughts of the day begin to drift away, like petals carried on a gentle breeze. Let go of the need to decipher, to understand, to speak. The silence that follows is not an empty one. It is a peaceful, comfortable quiet, the kind of silence you share with a dear friend. There are no more messages to send, no more rules to navigate. There is only this moment, this quiet room, this soft bed. Allow your body to feel heavy and warm. Let the gentle pull of sleep draw you downwards, into a place of deep and dreamless rest. Your journey into the past is over for tonight. You can leave the rustle of silk dresses and the whispers of the ballroom behind. You can leave the dusty books and the sun-drenched gardens to rest. They will be there for you if you wish to visit again. But for now, your only task is to sleep, to sink into the deep, quiet soil of your own subconscious, and to let your mind be still. The world will wait. The stories will wait. Tonight is for peace.